the street naming. We'll change it from the
Yeah, so we're going to begin with the DOT neighborhood loading zones. I'm just going to give the New York City Streets Master Plan is not, the master plan update is not ready yet. So we're going to take that off the agenda. And then we'll go right into the Owl's Head Greenway connector.
Okay.
Okay, so Jane, we're live streamed.
Okay, so all right. So welcome everybody and welcome to our Traffic and Transportation Committee. It's Thursday, June 10th at 7 p.m. And tonight on our agenda, we're going to begin with the Department of Transportation speaking to us about the neighborhood loading zones update. And we welcome our liaison, Leroy Branch, who's here. So welcome, Leroy. And Josephine, did you want to add anything to the introduction or may they begin?
No, you may begin. Leroy,
Yes.
nice to see you. I feel I see Leroy quite often
Yes.
these days, but thank you for coming tonight. Leroy, do you have a presentation?
I believe there is a presentation.
Okay, so
Ann or Matthew, who's going to give the presentation?
I've enabled the share.
Hey, good afternoon. Good evening, everybody. My name is Matthew Rosa. I am the project manager for the Neighborhood Loading Zone program. Thank you for having us here this evening. I guess I can start presenting, right? I will be presenting on the Neighborhood Loading Zone program and how we have been expanding throughout the city, as well as how we want to expand starting this year as well. So I just want to make sure everybody's able to see my screen.
Yes, thank you.
Great. Thank you. So yeah, I will go right into it. So the Neighborhood Loading Zone program really became a program when we've seen a large increase in commercial vehicle traffic, as well as for hire vehicle traffic in residential neighborhoods, especially narrow streets within residential neighborhoods, where we've seen which has caused increase in double parking, as well as unwanted parking behaviors on these streets, including parking on bike lanes while vehicles drop off passengers, as well as deliveries to residential buildings. The goal of the neighborhood loading zone is to really create a space by the curb where vehicles are able to safely access and conduct their pickup and drop off activities by the curb without either double parking or parking on a curb cut or on a bike lane and other unwanted parking behaviors on the street. Our target users are not only for delivery vehicles such as UPS and FedEx, but also we are anticipating uses by taxis for hire vehicles, as well as personal vehicles to drop off their goods on their blocks when needed. So currently we have 111 individual neighborhood loading zones throughout all 5 boroughs. We started the neighborhood loading zone program, installed the first loading zones back in the summer of 2019. We installed 62 neighborhood loading zones in 10 different corridors. This was really a 1-year observation period where we wanted to test out the loading zones in different types of streets and different neighborhoods. Additionally, in winter of 2020-2021, we have added 49 additional neighborhood loading zones in 18 different corridors throughout the city. Currently in Brooklyn, we have neighborhood loading zones at Manhattan Avenue, Park Slope, as well as Sunset Park, totaling 24 neighborhood loading zones. So moving into 2021, this year, we want to expand our program into neighborhoods that we haven't explored yet, including Community Board 10, to really expand our footprint throughout the city. So what is the neighborhood loading zone? The neighborhood loading zone is a no parking regulation, mostly Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. We do have different types of hours as well as days, depending on the need of the neighborhood, but we're trying to standardize it around the same times. Additionally to the no parking regulation or signage, we have our pedestrian level neighborhood loading zone information sign, where on the front we have the logo of the neighborhood loading zone. And the back we have a quick overview of the program and what the zone is intended use is. Additionally, we also have our email address, nlz@dot.nyc.gov, where community members can directly provide feedback on the use of the loading zones. The neighborhood loading zones that we have placed are typically around 40 feet in length. We came up with this length as a way to really accommodate for relatively larger delivery vehicles, such as UPS and FedEx vans. We found that throughout our observation period that if the loading zones are too short, and if it's the vehicles may not access the loading zone and instead double park. And the easier the loading zone is accessible, we've seen more use of the loading zones by larger delivery vehicles. We place these loading zones in front of residential buildings, large residential buildings on the block, mid-block, as well as corner of the blocks where we see commercial retailers and commercial activity, where we also have seen the loading zone used by commercial deliveries as well. So throughout our 1-year observation, we've conducted a series of studies, and we found that there has been up to 70% decrease in double parking on our study blocks. Really has been used by mostly delivery vehicles, residential delivery vehicles, but we've also seen used by rental trucks as well as personal vehicles dropping off their goods either in front of their buildings before they go find parking, or dropping off passengers as well. So from our 1-year observation period, we've created a set of criteria that we would like to focus our expansion of the neighborhood loading zones on. This is really placing neighborhood loading zones on narrow residential streets. We're looking at mostly looking at streets that are less than 35 feet in length if it's a one-way street, with also additionally with streets with bus routes as well as bike lanes to take priority to see increased safety on bike lanes, as well as increased improvement and efficiency of the buses as well. The placement of the loading zones are the same as I mentioned. We're looking at corner of the blocks where we see commercial retailers, or in front of the entrance of a large residential building mid-block as well. In the past, we have conducted several different types of outreach. Starting this year, we are trying to standardize our outreach procedure. We've created a neighborhood loading zone portal in our DOT's projects and initiatives page. The portal is intended to really receive a wider variety of feedback from the community. The portal is set so we have set up a map of the community where the community members can directly place a suggestion on the map where they would like to see a neighborhood loading zone. The maps are, there's two different types of maps. We have our expansion map where we limit the boundaries to specific communities. In this case, as you can see on the screen, we limited the boundaries to Community District 10 in Brooklyn. And we also have another type of map where we call it the infill request, where people can suggest a neighborhood loading zones in neighborhoods that we've already expanded in the past. If there seems to be an increased need of neighborhood loading zones where we already placed neighborhood loading zones in the past, there is also opportunity for suggestions there as well. So we are planning to utilize this map by first receiving feedback from the community After we have received feedback, DOT will analyze the locations and assess the locations for feasibility. After that, we will send it over to the community board for final comments. And once the comments have been received, we would like to move forward to implementation. Additional outreach materials include our standard What Happens Here flyers, where we can provide more information on the blocks that the neighborhood loading zones are going into, as well as we have developed what we call palm cards in the past, where we have listed the neighborhood loading zones, as well as the quick overview of the program on the card that we can hand out as well. So that is really a quick overview of the neighborhood loading zone program. We're looking forward to working with the community board to expand our program throughout the city. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. So I think we're going to stop the share so we could open it up to any questions.
Right.
Turning it over to you, Jane.
Right. So we didn't see the any particular sites listed on your presentation. So is that something that you have not established yet? Are you waiting for feedback for that? Or do you have sites in mind?
No.
No.
So currently we don't have any sites in mind. The way we wanted to work start is to really receive feedback from the community first, and then we can assess the locations and we'll provide the finalized locations back to the board.
Yeah, Jane, just through the feedback
Yes.
portal, we're going to put up the feedback portal, give that out to the community.
Mhm.
Everyone will go on that feedback portal and make their suggestions, and then we will come up with specific locations, and then give that to community. Then come back and I guess go through this again.
Okay.
In your remarks, you said that this would be replacing alternate side of street parking signs. What does that mean? And if so, how would those areas be cleaned?
Yes, so currently we're looking at replacing alternate side parking regulations. So that is all the the regular street sweeping regulations that are mostly in residential neighborhoods. The cleaning will still be taking place at the same time. It is a no parking regulation, which is the same as the alternate side parking regulations, and where it turns to no parking at those times. So we're looking at the cleaning to take on at the same time as the ASP, alternate side parking.
Could you repeat that?
Sure. So the alternate side parking cleaning will take part at the same time for the neighborhood loading zones on the block.
What does that mean? I don't know. So you mean that it'll be unchanged? They'll still have alternate side parking even though there's a loading zone on your block. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So
That's
basically,
how it was
okay.
explained. Yes.
All right. So basically, anywhere there's alternate side of street parking, if there is a loading zone on that particular block, the street sweeping will happen at that alternate side of the street parking that day. So if it's Monday and Thursday from 11 to 10, it still would take place Monday and Thursday from 11.
So the loading zone wouldn't operate during that time so that they could clean the street?
That should be a yes or no answer.
Yeah, that's yes. It they will sweep it at that time. So yes,
the
it
truck
should
should
not
know
operate during
if
Right,
Friday,
as you know, as we all know, when alternate side of the street parking happens, when trucks come, they pull right in and deliver sometimes during street sweeping time. But yes, you're 100% correct. When the street sweeping time is happening, it should not be there. But as you know, what will happen, like it happens now.
so I'm a little, I think it's a great idea, but I saw the first picture you showed, it showed a very residential block with a UPS truck. And I thought, well, okay, so that was going to be almost every block will have a loading zone. So the UPS, because now every block is getting an Amazon delivery probably twice a day. So, so does that mean it'll be on residential blocks, or is it really intended to be the corners closer to the commercial, and it's supposed to stop the trucks on 3rd Avenue and they can maybe park on 79th Street on the corner and not block 3rd Avenue? Is it, which way is it, or is it both? Because that's like 2 different goals.
So really, we're intending it mostly for residential deliveries. So the way we have assessed the locations in the past are on a particular block, we will observe where the double parking is really occurring the most. It might be in front of a specific building, or it might be on the corner of the blocks. So we have 2 different placements for that, but we try to assess the most feasible locations on the block.
Excuse me, it's Joe. I'm on the phone.
Okay, I'm sorry, Joe. Hi, Joe.
Can I just ask a question? This almost sounds like city benches. People can call in or request a loading zone, like they request benches in different places. I mean, this is what I'm...
Joe, the difference between this and city benches is when you request a bench, generally we can put a bench just about anywhere we would like to. But in loading zones, what we're trying to do is just get an idea of where the community would like to see the loading zones. There is a criteria of where we would like to put them and where we can't put them. For instance, we're not going to put them on blocks where there's precincts or firehouses or any type of public facilities of that nature. And we're going to come up with a list of different locations that we can put them, that is feasible, and then see if trucks are being double parked, if you have large residential buildings on that block. And then we will come up with a list of different locations in CB10 and then bring that list back to the community board for comment.
So Leroy, can I ask, so would this be a typical reason to have a loading zone? Our Savior Lutheran preschool is notorious for having the residential street, as well as 4th Avenue, being completely blocked when the children are being dropped off for the morning. Because the children you can't just drop off a 2-year-old and say, go ahead, go in school. You have to and the school happens to have this downstairs, you have to walk in downstairs, blah, blah, blah. And you have to go and put your kid in, and you have to go to the cubby and get his stuff. It's about a 10-minute ordeal to experience to drop off your kid. So the block gets amazing. And last night I was at a wake viewing, and the people on that block were complaining to my son, who was a preschool drop-off parent, you block our block, we can't move we get stuck there. It was Cheech and James having this dialogue. Would that be like the typical place to have a loading zone by a preschool that has this special circumstance?
All right, to answer as Doris would like me to say, no. That's a totally different issue, which can be solved by a loading zone, but that would be not this program. That's really our school safety team that would come out and assess how many spaces are needed for the drop off and pickup of kids with school buses. So, I mean, please let Josephine know.
Parents vans.
Right. You just let Josephine know which school that is, and we can do that assessment. But this program is mainly for residential deliveries or pickups and deliveries of residential blocks.
So I have a question. So the time that was indicated is 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. In a neighborhood where parking is at a premium to begin with, you're taking spaces away. What was it, 4 or 5 spaces or whatever it is?
3 feet.
For an entire day, every day of the week. First of all, those of us who live on blocks that have terraces, they took away those parking spaces where people are making right-hand turns, etc. They seem to be taking away more and more of our parking spaces in the neighborhood. And I'm not saying that this is a bad idea, but I'm just questioning the hours that you're talking about. 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. is a very, very long period of time to dedicate 8 spaces on however many blocks is going to be, chosen for these zones. Is there the ability to lessen the time to make it more during business hours instead of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.? People come home from work at 5 o'clock. They want to be able to park their car. People don't leave until, alternate side doesn't start until 8 o'clock in the morning. So why would we be expecting deliveries at 7 o'clock in the morning? So is there an ability to lessen the amount of time that there would be no parking designated in these areas?
Yes.
Yes, Matthew, you can explain what yes means.
So throughout the city, we have different times. For example, in Manhattan, we have the loading zone starting at 8 a.m. and ending at, sorry, I want to make this right, 8 a.m. and ending at 6 p.m. In Staten Island, for example, we have the loading zone going from Monday to Friday. So we do have different time frames that we can definitely assess depending on the needs of the neighborhood. So we can, if there is a recommendation from the board, we'll definitely take that into consideration.
Thank you.
Well, I live on a block. My house and my neighbor's house are the loading zones.
Take it with you.
There is a fire hydrant and 2 driveways, and those areas are used as loading docks, and it works very effectively. Have you considered, instead of creating loading zones on certain blocks with fire hydrants, to increase the space there so a truck can pull in and you just use the fire hydrant because they're not there very long? That's my first question. My second question is, you're now talking about commercial zones. We have 3rd and 5th Avenues that are huge commercial areas with major delivery problems. Why are you not addressing that? And especially on 3rd Avenue, where DOT is considering making a truck route, where the hell are those trucks going to unload?
Okay. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Tiffany Ann Taylor. I am one of the deputy directors for Freight Mobility. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I'm going to jump in and do my best to answer some of the questions that you just put forward, but I'm going to keep my voice at this decibel. So for fire hydrants, Matthew can provide a little bit more detail, but in some of the neighborhoods where we have installed the loading zones, they actually are, some of the spaces actually are adjacent to a fire hydrant or maybe even a bus stop. So in many instances, we call them curb cuts because the curb is actually cut there. So what you're suggesting is a good idea, and that's something that's actually already incorporated. So if for some instances, the physical zone itself might be shorter, it could be like 30 feet. And then we're also including the additional space next to the hydrant. So that in actuality, the space is a little bit larger because we do know some of those delivery trucks are coming in and out very briefly. So thank you for that suggestion. As it relates to commercial zones, I want everyone to just remember what we're proposing here for neighborhood loading zones is not to take away the other options to address parking and loading. As Leroy mentioned, we still have the opportunity to install, in partnership with our other units, of course, but we still have the opportunity to install strictly commercial loading zones or truck loading zones as well. So this is really, you should think about neighborhood loading zones as another tool in the toolkit for DOT to use. This tool in particular is really specific to the residential streets because double parking is a real challenge. And we know with double parking often comes noise from horn honking and maybe some safety concerns for maybe cyclists and pedestrians on the more narrow streets. So the neighborhood loading zones is really an additional tool to address parking. As it relates to 3rd Avenue, I know that I understand that there are concerns about proposals to address truck routes. Should that decision move forward, there still will be an opportunity for public discussion and public hearing at this time.
Jane, I think I see Larry has his hand up.
Yes, thank you, Larry.
Oh,
Please
Larry,
unmute.
muted?
Hear me now?
Yes.
Will any parking meter spaces be taken up by these loading zones?
No, they will not. And I'll turn it back over to Matthew. But these are not to replace the metered space.
Or you're just gonna just usurp them if you want to know?
Wow.
No. And it's still, the enforcement will be just like alternate sides parking, or
Yes.
same thing?
Jane, there's two more questions. Lori and Dean?
Oh, thank you.
Hi, I have a question about enforcement. So how do we enforce if you have a loading zone, let's say, on a residential street just off of, as Doris mentioned, one of our busier thoroughfares, 3rd Avenue or 5th Avenue, where there's more commercial traffic? How do you enforce? I mean, you're differentiating between a truck loading zone and just sort of a temporary commercial drop-off. But I don't really see, if you have a loading zone, that these truck drivers are going to necessarily know or care where they're, bringing their truck. So while double parking is a problem, as you mentioned, the contemplated type of delivery is really a very quick one where, maybe the delivery person, UPS or FedEx, jumps out and jumps back in. But the, these zones, how do you stop it from just being used for the overflow of, commercial truck unloading, which has become a very big problem with our open restaurants, because now where they used to pull over to unload, those spaces are no longer available. And of course, as one of the committee members mentioned, all this problem is all exaggerated, by the fact that in our district in particular, we are very much a car district, because all we have for the most part, in terms of trains, is the R train and some bus service. So here in particular, we have this concern. So I was wondering, number one, about the enforcement, and number two, I really think that these things need to be looked at together rather than in individual parts.
Great, thank you. Yes, so in terms of enforcement, we've been working closely with the police department. We send out the locations of the neighborhood loading zones to to NYPD, so they know that we are placing the neighborhood loading zones where they're going in, and we ask for to be enforced in that way. In terms of the usage of the neighborhood loading zones, although we do anticipate our main use to be commercial residential deliveries, quick pickup and drop offs, but we also do see use by, as you mentioned, deliveries into commercial retailers, which is also one of the intended uses that we are looking at as well, if we have them placed in near a commercial corridor. So it really is intended for use by them as well, instead of really double parking on either a commercial corridor or a residential corridor. In terms of vehicles and taking up parking spaces, as we mentioned before, we can consider the length of loading zones by placing them near a hydrant or other open spaces by the curb to really shorten the loading zones without mitigating the accessibility of the zones, as well as definitely would like open to discussing the time frame or the hours of the operation of the loading zones as well.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, Matthew's last part in particular, it's more than just locations that we're looking for in terms of feedback. Once the zones start to go in, we're really relying on residents to give us additional feedback on, are these really working or not? And we do take it seriously. So just as an example, in the first phase, or really the pilot phase, we didn't really have too much of a standard size for the type of zones that were being installed. We tried a variety of them to see which ones would work, given, each neighborhood in New York is really unique. And so based on community feedback, we were able to figure out, hey, it really makes sense that for, a standard delivery truck or, at least 2 passenger sized vehicles, on average, the zones that we installed should be about 40 feet long, or at least be 40 feet if it includes being adjacent to something like a fire hydrant. So, local feedback, especially with your strong relationship with Leroy, is really helpful for us. So if zones are going in, and there's still challenges with their feasibility or even enforcement, we invite you to give us that feedback to help us out with that.
Thank you. I think Dean had a question or comment. Josephine, I think you had seen that Dean had a comment.
Yes, Dean has his hands up. Dean, you're up.
Yes, hello, everybody. I'm kind of wondering about the necessity for these loading zones, because for retail delivery, we're talking, the FedEx, the UPS, on a block line, and I'm not sure how long it is, like on 71st Street from Ridge Boulevard to Colonial Road. It's a long block. I'm wondering if the retail delivery trucks would actually park, let's say, at one block and try walking all the way down, which is going to increase the time it takes. Where now, most of the time, these trucks do pull in to a driveway or a fire hydrant. Occasionally, you will see them completely double parked, blocking traffic because it's a narrow street. But I'm just wondering, is there a great necessity? I'm not saying there's no necessity. And what is the experience on long residential blocks? Will it actually be used? And I don't know, maybe, some of the experts have some answers there.
Sure, thank you. Thank you for that question. So in terms of longer blocks, we placed neighborhood loading zones, for example, in Jackson Heights on 74th Street, or relatively longer blocks in Manhattan around 15th Street between 5th Avenue or 6th Avenue, which is about 800 feet in length. And certain types of blocks, we placed neighborhood loading zones either on both ends of the blocks. So one of the neighborhood loading zones will be in the beginning of the block and another one at the end, which has significantly increased the use of the neighborhood loading zones by these delivery vehicles. And as you mentioned, there are already spaces open by the curb, by curb cuts, as well as hydrants. So if we see that, one side of the block or one end of the block, there really isn't a necessity for the neighborhood loading zones, and if it is at the end, we would definitely like to, assess the needs. As I mentioned before, we would like to see where the neighborhood loading zones will really work best, and hopefully place them strategically so we mitigate unwanted parking behavior as much as possible.
Thank you.
Larry, did I see you with your hand up again? No?
Diane has her hand raised.
Oh, Diane, thank you.
Thank you. So I have a question about loading zones that would be, let's say, near fire hydrants, but would they be blocking anybody's driveway? Because oftentimes, especially in our neighborhood, on the side streets, the fire hydrants, et cetera, are positioned between 2 driveways. And if you were considering those areas, in order to make it long enough, would you be also blocking a residential driveway?
No, we absolutely would not be. So again, just as a reminder, what we really need is initial feedback, right, from the community. Then we will take those recommendations to DOT. Matthew will lead the analysis, and we'll actually have conversations with our borough engineers to make sure that these suggestions make sense based on, of course, like examples that you're providing, and then bring it back to you all to say, hey, based on your recommendations, here are the ones that we think can make the most sense. So no, we don't keep blocking residential.
Do you have an idea how many of these loading zones you would like to install in our district?
So currently we don't have a specific number of loading zones, but we we're looking at, typically we do install them in a certain corridor that may need see higher use or higher need of the loading zone, or on a spur of a certain corridor that may see a higher use of a loading zone. We place anywhere from, let's see, around, yeah, we don't have a specific number, but we place anywhere from 10 to 20 loading zones, neighborhood loading zones in each district. It really depends on the need of the districts.
Thank you.
You had given on your map, you had indicated that this was something you had done in Sunset Park and Park Slope. While you mentioned Queens, Park Slope and Sunset Park might be an area that our panelists are more familiar with. Could you share with us which streets that was and give us the idea of how that was implemented, so we have a reference point we can better understand?
Yes, absolutely. So in Park Slope, we've installed the neighborhood loading zones on 2nd and 3rd Street, from 4th Avenue to all the way to Prospect Park West, actually. So we didn't install the neighborhood loading zones on every single block. We installed it on most blocks through those 2 corridors, but we've seen a few of the blocks that are, were actually wider than the other blocks, or it may have a lot wider buffer between the bike lane and the vehicle on the travel lane, where we didn't see a really big necessity for the neighborhood loading zones, as well as blocks that may already have a no parking regulation for either for loading and unloading commercial industrial buildings or other uses. So in those types of blocks, we have not placed any neighborhood loading zones. We really focused on blocks that did not have adequate open space or open space by the curb for vehicles to really easily access during the day.
And where was it in Sunset Park?
In Sunset Park, we have placed them between from 48th Street down to 51st Street. Again, we placed them on so the general block started from 4th Avenue to 8th or 9th Avenue, in between those areas where we've seen relatively larger residential buildings and not a lot of open space by the curve with other regulations and items.
Is 48th Street the bus route?
Sorry, I'm trying to get this right. I believe it's 49th Street and 50th Street. The bus routes would be.
Okay.
Thank you. Larry, you do have your hand up. Please go ahead. You're on mute.
Now you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
No, I was going to ask about how many of these you're going to put in the neighborhood. I mean, essentially what you're doing is 40 feet long, and essentially putting a bus stop on these side streets. And it's taking us, take a lot of parking areas. You can do this in like every other block in Bay Ridge. You're gonna have a lot many parking spaces. We'll be losing. Right. It's a 12 hours a day. It's a bus stop, but it's still when most traffic is occurring, taking away all these parking spaces. That's
I think it's important to. Oh, I'm sorry. Continue, Larry.
I mean, it seems to be. If we're going to be a lot of this in the neighborhood, a lot of them, situated in Community Board 10, we're going to be losing a lot of parking spaces and essentially having like a bus stop. It's just not always being used. And the issue with the bus stop, it's no parking any time, but this is going to be like a 12-hour bus stop inserted into residential neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
It's just.
Sorry, I didn't want to talk over you. I apologize for that. I think it's really important to remember we're trying to respond to the demand of freight citywide. As you can imagine, the pandemic for sure has impacted how many deliveries everyone across the city is getting. And in addition to what was traditionally happening before, any type of services that are happening, if there's HVAC or cable TV or what have you, that are still servicing residences. And so it's important that we add another tool, on behalf of DOT to do our best to manage this, because we still have to ensure street safety. I think it's also important to know it's not our goal to set out and install these zones on every other block. That's not what we're saying. We're coming to you as a way to better understand what are some of the needs. You know, we are not experts at all in your neighborhood. You all live there. So with your advice and your guidance, what makes the most sense? Not every neighborhood has the same amount of loading zones. Matt can speak to it in more detail, but specifically on the North Shore of Staten Island, which is more dense, there's far less zones than perhaps there are some in Sunset Park or even Chelsea. You know, it really speaks to the need and the demand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jane, Doris? has her
Yeah,
hand up.
Doris, thank you.
Oh, I have two comments. One, Matt cited two sites, one in Jackson Heights and one on 18th Street in Manhattan, which are extremely different than any site in Bay Ridge, other than our commercial corridors. But you also said, and Jane very rightly asked, tell us about Sunset Park and Park Slope. Well, I'm very familiar with the 2nd and 3rd Avenue areas and 48th and 49th Street. Could you, not now, but could you send Community Board 10 exactly where those loading zones are on those blocks? Thank you.
Yes, and we also have it on our website as well, but we'll definitely send
We're
them.
tired of working on websites. We want it sent directly to us, clear and simple.
So, and I'll send that
That's all.
out. I'll certainly send that out.
Okay. Well,
All right,
thank you.
Thank you.
You know, I think just to kind of, you know, give you that synopsis from our board, the fact that we do have the concerns of 3rd Avenue and 5th Avenue, our main commercial streets, and all of the needs and businesses that are on there already, and all of the concerns that so many of our blocks are these commercial corridors throughout Community Board 10 that affects the residents already, and are issues that all of the residents who live by those blocks are already working around. And so, you know, I think that we really need to advocate that those feedback forms and feedback opportunities that our residents will have really needs to be something that we do with fidelity to make sure that everyone has an opportunity. Now, is that also, from what I saw, it's just the portal on the website. So I am concerned that some people who would want to give feedback on this may not have, you know, may not be using the internet daily, some of the residents who live there. And, you know, we just want to make sure that information is shared with people of all ages and all abilities, and just make sure that we can get the word out.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, as everything else, Josephine and I work very closely together. We work, you know how we work together. So
We've met you
we
before.
know,
Yeah.
yes. So any information that somebody can't get on the portal, they want to send to Josephine, she can definitely get it to me, and I will get it to Matthew directly. So that's no problem. If anybody has any information and they don't want to or can't get on the portal.
And I would just like to add, Matthew really is the contact person. Anything that you see on that website, Matthew created. Any email that comes in, Matthew gets. Any postcard you've seen, Matthew put together. So if there are other resources, of course, you're absolutely right. We want to make sure that this information is accessible. You do have the website, but we can create palm cards. Obviously, we're trying to be sensitive in the time during the pandemic, but we can, you know, distribute postcards need be. If there's a better way, maybe through some sort of community meeting in which folks are handed out flyers, we can send you digital information to be printed. So whatever way that we can make, and also we have information in multiple languages. I forgot to mention that, both on the website and for the printed materials. So whichever way is the best way to be able to communicate with the most people, we can absolutely accommodate you. Just let us know.
Thank you.
Okay, Doris, I'm sorry, Jane, I keep, her hand is down. Jane, back to you. That concludes this topic.
Okay, thank you very much. Now,
Thank you.
thank you, and thank you to our reps from DOT. Josephine, you had said that on our agenda that the item for the New York City Streets Master Plan update was not ready now, so
Not
just,
yet. We're gonna put that to the fall. I'll be
okay,
in touch with Leroy and we'll figure that out.
wonderful. Okay, and then on my agenda that I had received, the only other item was about the Ralph Shiano's Corner.
No, we have another agenda item. I'm sorry, it was amended to include
I
the
am sorry.
DDC presentation. And I saw Maria on from the Department of Design and Construction to give us an update on the Owl's Head Greenway Connector project.
Thank you.
Maria, I don't know who from DDC is going to be giving.
Yeah,
the
hi.
presentation.
Hello.
Hi, Maria.
Hi. I have Chris Fields. He's the community construction liaison, and I believe we have another member of our team. Maybe they are the one on the phone. Chris, are you on? Hello?
I see Chris's name.
Yeah.
Chris is muted.
Ah, there you go. All right, so Chris, I think, did you prepare a presentation or are you just giving an oral, right? Presentation?
I think Chris is having some trouble, Maria.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the audio.
Mhm. Yeah, Chris, you're coming in on 3 different lines, so I don't know whether you needed to leave and try and come back on.
Yes, I'm on just trying to do it for my phone and the computer. Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Does everyone have the presentation, or should I just be brief and just briefly tell you guys about what's going on?
Yeah, I didn't. Did you send us a presentation? I didn't see that.
I do not have the presentation, and I see others in the chat are saying they do not have the presentation.
Should I?
Can you drop it in the chat? I don't know.
Or if you email it to me, I can share my screen. Or you could share, if you have it, you could share on your screen. I've enabled share screen for you.
Chris?
Yeah, I'm very new to this. Hold on. I'm trying to navigate through this Zoom call and do this real quick. 1 second. Sorry. Sorry, I thought you guys had it.
I thought Christy was going to email it ahead. I guess
Yeah,
not.
me too. Yeah, no worries. Here we go.
How are we doing?
We do well. Josephine, I can just send it to you.
Yeah, just send it to me. That would be great. Chris, you have my email, the J Beckman?
Yes.
Okay.
Should be sent. Did you receive it?
Not yet. Oh, looks like it just came.
Okay, great.
Couldn't get the audio from my computer. So that's why I logged
Okay.
in.
Can everyone see it?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, Chris, you tell me when, and so the presentation is up.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Christopher Fields. I am the Community Construction Liaison for the Owl's Head Connector section of Brooklyn Waterfront Greenway Project, HWK 1048G. The work on this, okay. Good. Okay. The work on this project includes the reconstruction of the rehabilitation of the existing retaining wall on 2nd Avenue between 58th Street and 64th Street, the Brooklyn Army Terminal, as well as we're installing new high-level storm sewers on Wakeman as well along 2nd Avenue between 58th and 65th Street. New catch basins, basin connections, curbs, sidewalks, retaining walls, and Wakeman again. We will come down the line and do milling and paving, roadway pavement, resurfacing, new street lighting, landscaping, and things of that nature. So the first, okay, you just flipping through, Josephine?
Yeah, is that okay? I thought I was following what you were saying.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Because most of those pictures are other, like along 2nd Avenue. We have a couple of pictures right there of the new sidewalk we have. Right.
Right, this is Wakeman. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, new sidewalk and curb on Wakeman Place.
Yes. And I know we were in the area a couple of months ago, but we won't be back in the area for a little while right there.
Right here.
On a section of Ridge and Wakeman. Right, we won't be back for a while. We're about 65% finished with the project in total, but we will be back in this area to do some lighting, the fence work, milling and paving as well. So we're not totally out of your hair, but for the most part, we're going to be back for a little while, definitely a couple of months.
So this is the new completion date here?
Yes, we have a new completion date of 1/27/22 now. And a brief description of why we had to do this. Yeah, there was unforeseen field conditions underneath the ground when we pulled up there. You know, the streets are over 100 years old. The things that are underneath the streets are over 100 years old. So we got underneath, we came into some things we weren't prepared for.
Okay.
Any questions?
I'm gonna stop the share. So, okay, I'm back. Let's see, we have some questions.
Larry?
Larry,
I see Larry has his hand up.
So you're doing combined sewers and you're not doing separated sewers? Is that a policy? You just rebuild a combined sewer, not a separated system?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
Sewers, you're building a combined sewer. You're rebuilding a combined sewer.
Yes.
You don't have separated systems. You don't do that in newer construction?
I'm not familiar.
Okay.
Doris has her hand raised.
Thank you.
Doris, you're on mute.
Hi, Doris.
How far towards the water does the Greenway connector go? Because I was recently on a call with the Parks Department, and they have other visions for this area and bicycle lanes. So I was curious how far towards the water does the Greenway connector go?
It's just from Wakeman to Colonial.
Okay,
Okay, Dean has his hand raised.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, what is the reason for the work stoppage now? I didn't catch that.
When we went underground, we saw field conditions that were really, it was pretty poor. I forget the connector that we were looking for originally. It wasn't lined up properly. I believe there are some utilities and things of that nature. So a lot of departments had to get together and find out about the relocation for the manhole, things of that nature.
Okay.
Okay.
So, planning.
I'm sorry?
It sounds like, so you have to get the different agencies together to plan out where you're moving things.
Correct. And it was already established. And after everything was done, we went right back to work shortly thereafter.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Okay, Jane, there was a question that is being asked by an attendee for DDC. On Ridge and Wakeman Place, the work has displaced a crosswalk signal. Can that be fixed?
I'll make a note of it.
Thank you.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. And thank you for pointing that out.
Yes, Doris, you have your hand raised.
oh no,
Is
I didn't take it down. Sorry, I'm done.
No worries.
Okay, I don't see any.
I don't see anything else. Okay.
If anyone else wants to be added to the look ahead every week, just send their emails to Ms. Josephine and we can definitely include you.
All right. All
Oh,
right.
I'm sorry. There was another question in the Q&A. Is there any update on the bike path along 2nd Avenue from 58 to Wakeman? Do you have that, Chris?
I do not. That'll be down the line as well.
Down the line further. Okay. Great.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
You're awesome. Thank you.
So we know where to find you. If anyone else has questions, we'll be sure to get them to Chris or to Maria, to both. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. So I believe then that we can move on to our last item on our agenda, which will be the street naming request for Ralph Sciano's Corner, southwest corner of 92nd Street and 3rd Avenue. So this is our second meeting on this topic. And so now we will be able to have our committee discussion and vote. All right. So let's begin with that. If you recall, the Sciano family had come to our meeting. We shared this out at the last board meeting. Were there any questions or points that anyone wanted to add to this discussion? No. Okay, so it looks like, Josephine, that we may be ready for our vote.
Okay, give me a moment. I'm going to.
All right, so for the street naming request, Ralph Sciano's Corner at 92nd Street and 3rd Avenue, please cast your ballot and submit.
Assuming Josephine in favor.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Okay, I'm going to share the results. So the motion carries 8 in favor. We have a quorum. I'm sorry, 9 with Joe. Thank you, Joe.
Okay.
Thank you. So this motion has been passed and that we will share that at our board meeting. Thank you.
Great.
Okay.
Okay, very good.
It's 8:03, Dean. We're doing pretty well.
Yes, we are.
Thank
Dean
you.
is our timekeeper. All right.
I'm
All
still
right.
in the office, so I'm so happy you're moving along. I want to go home. You are too, Josephine. so.
Yes, I'm here too.
Excellent.
Motion to
Can I ask a-
adjourn?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
What are the next steps now with these residential street loading areas?
The neighborhood loading zones?
Neighborhood, yeah, sorry, neighborhood loading zones.
Yeah, so as DOT said, there's going to be a link on their website to open to members of the public if they want to offer a recommendation. And then they're gonna, I don't know what the period of time is, but they said probably during the months of June and July. And then they're gonna review and study those locations. And those that they determine that are gonna be, you know, they're gonna provide us with a list of those in Community Board 10, and then we'll have a public meeting on them. Whenever so I think it's sometime in the fall.
So they're not asking us to kind of survey the area and for the board to put in any location. It's up to each individual member of the community to submit
Yes.
something if they care to.
Correct.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay. All right then. Any other questions?
I
Yeah.
have two. I have one. Joanne asked me to say thank you to all of you who sent warm wishes to her on the loss of her father, Joe. She appreciated the thoughts and prayers and good wishes. So thank you on her behalf. And I have to ask about Susan Pulaski because when I saw that email, it broke my heart. Do you know anything more, Josephine?
I just, as we were sitting here, got an email about the arrangements, which are this weekend. She passed away on Sunday. It was very unexpected. From what I heard, just from one of her friends, she was going in for a surgery, and I think she got an infection, and you know, it was just really unexpected. I spoke to her just, you know, I think Thursday.
Right.
So we're very sad.
You learn to appreciate life
Yeah.
can be full
Yes.
of surprises.
Yeah.
God bless us all. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Our hearts go out to her family.
Yeah, definitely. But I will share tonight before I leave the arrangements. And then the arrangements are in Westchester, but her friends locally said they are also going to be planning in a few weeks a memorial here in Bay Ridge. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
so much. And thank you all for your service tonight. Thank you for coming to the meeting and making time for this in your very busy schedules and long days. So much appreciated. All right, I'm sure we have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
Thank you.
Thank you.